So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Michelle Maloney. I'm one of the co-founders and the national convener of the Australian Earth Laws Alliance. And I'm really pleased today to be able to introduce the Faith Ecology Network's webinar featuring their fantastic work looking at how faith communities can support biodiversity and the 10 ways that you can connect with biodiversity and support the living world. Before I introduce our lovely speakers today, I'd like to acknowledge country. So I live, work and play on the traditional lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people here in North Brisbane. I'd like to acknowledge elders past and present and emerging leaders and communities who are working so hard to care for country and to care for each other. As always, I'd like to acknowledge the remarkable civilizational and governance culture that has looked after this place for such an incredibly long time, cared for country and cared for each other since time immemorial. I also like to acknowledge the ongoing impacts and legacy of colonisation and the work that AILA and our sister organisations, Future Dreaming and the New Economy Network Australia are involved in contributing to the decolonising of our hearts and minds. Now, the Earth Laws Month extravaganza is actually coming to a close this weekend. We've had 4.5 weeks of amazing events. If you've missed Earth Laws Month, please do pop onto our website and keep an eye on the program, because within a matter of a week or two, all of the recordings will actually be up and connected to that page. Any events that people register for, they will be receiving those recordings anyway, that they'll be sent off to you, but then they'll be made publicly available within a matter of weeks. And a huge thank you to my awesome team, James Lee and Sarah Bashforth are on this call today. They have been amazing, helping with all the wonderful speakers and the wonderful people. And I think all these recordings, including today's, will be a very important resource for many people. But that's pretty much it from me. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to the Faith Ecology Network team, and I will be here to assist whenever you need me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and welcome on behalf of the Faith Ecology Network. And I'd just like to continue the acknowledging country with a brief video prepared by Lisa Buxton, the Executive Officer of the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry and the Reconciliation Church at La Perouse in Sydney. Unfortunately, it's very soft, so put your ear up close to the microphone so you can hear it clearly. Thank you, Michelle.
Creator Spirit, you gave us this Mother Earth to share. Humble us with the grace to listen with open hearts to country and to the story of others. Unite us all who drink the same water and breathe the same air, and for this we pray. Our ancestors' footprints are imprinted on country. For tens of thousands of years before recorded time, our people have walked on this land, on their own country to which they belong. Our relationship with the land is at the centre of our lives. Our country is our mother. In a sense, our country is us. We listen to country, speak to country, dance and sing up country, care for country, visit country, and long for country. Country is lived on and lived with. We pay our respects to elders past and present and thank them for passing on their knowledge, our language, and spiritual connections to country.
So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to introduce you to the Faith Ecology Network with another little video that explains things much better than I can, I think. So thank you, Michelle.
Australia is an ancient land which over eons has developed as a megadiverse hotspot with up to 10% of the Earth's species, many of which are unique. For Australia's Indigenous peoples, the oldest living culture in the world, country is their spirituality. For more recent Australians from diverse global faiths and traditions, each faith has its own creation stories, teachings and practices about wonder and care for all life on earth. Earth now faces an ecological crisis. The sciences, using technology, have opened human eyes to how natural life systems work as interconnected and interdependent. The Faith Ecology Network, or FEN as it's known, is an Australian-based network of people connecting faith with ecological awareness and care. FEN began in 2003 after an event Wonder and the Will to Care. A scientist spoke on the wonder-filled integral systems of planet Earth. 4 traditions responded, telling how this wonder was expressed in the faith. This set up a pattern for FEN events. Members wanted to learn from the sciences, showing respect and seeking an exchange.
The council here and our venue here is all about trying to support community activities, community learning, and it was really exciting to have the Faith Ecology Network bring their science thinking, evidence-based understanding of issues.
They wanted to plumb the depths of love for Earth in their own traditions. This grew as the basis for mutual respect, listening and learning.
If we listen to each other as scientists and people of faith, that we can both come to a better truth together. And I thought that was good.
Events have explored faith responses to aspects of issues such as climate change, mining, food, water, endless growth. Members have challenged their own traditions to tease out their own wisdom. They have gathered in prayer in public places to demonstrate their collaboration. They have met for mutual enrichment days to reflect and appreciate nature. FEN acts as a hub to share information and educational opportunities. FEN encourages its members to influence change and take action in their own faith.
Otherwise, we're not going to have a future to even worry about. And I think the responsibility falls a lot on our leaders, whether it's faith communities or otherwise, to be advocating this idea of environmental awareness.
FEN is a community of volunteers and currently includes people from Aboriginal, Anglican, Bahá'í, Brahma Kumaris, Buddhist, Catholic, Christian Orthodox, Jewish, Hindu, Islamic, Quaker and United Church faith traditions. We have partnerships with the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, United Religions Initiative, the Australian Earth Laws Alliance and Nature for All Australia. We welcome people of all faith traditions and none. FEN is currently auspiced by the Sisters of Good Samaritan after being hosted by the Columban Mission Institute Centre for Peace, Ecology and Justice in Sydney for 14 years. We are grateful from the grant from the Mercy Foundation, which enabled us to continue our work during the 2020 pandemic year. We rely totally on in-kind or financial donations for our survival. We invite you to be a part of this crucial network of networks, a living, breathing example of human ecology.
Thank you, Michelle. So as I've said, I think the video explains a lot more than words. It gives examples of how FEN's kept going over the years. And my name is Anne Lanyon. I'm the current coordinator of FEN, and I've been with FEN since the very beginning, which was 19 years ago. I'd like to introduce our 2 speakers now. David Lowe is a long-standing participant in FEN and a member of the Sydney Jewish community, and Sue Martin. And Sue is a long-time friend of FEN, a Catholic Ignatian woman who lives, loves, and cares for country in Western Sydney. So please put comments in the chat as we go along or questions into the chat, and we'll try to address them after David and Sue finished speaking. So David, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. So today I'll be putting forward a presentation on some of the work that our group has done, particularly during the lockdown period and some of the seminars then. I'll share my presentation now. Call out Anne or Sue, please, if there's any problems with the presentation. So there was a particular piece of work that the Faith Ecology Network has been working on for some time called 10 Ways to Care. And we'll be talking about it today, focusing in some ways on the process that's inherent in those 10 ways to care. The 10 ways were compiled by Sue and Anne, who are here today, and Jason John also from the Faith Ecology Network in the workshops that took place through 2020 and 2021. It provides a framework for communities, and in particular faith communities, to listen and learn, reflect and contemplate, and then act in an integrated way, and has examples of these different ways that are based on activities derived from First Nations peoples, scientific process, activists, community groups, and our faith traditions. This has become a key FEN resource and is now available on our website, 10 Ways Faith Groups Can Care for Biodiversity. So we have it organised according to these principles of listen and learn, reflect, contemplate and act, and then 10 particular ways such as listening to wisdom from the elders. We'll go into those in a little more detail later on, growing in sense of place and so on. So we had this very well developed, but also quite dense resource. And then the next part of our activity was considering how can we use that process of reflecting and acting to develop our resource. We want to present it in a way that is engaging. We want the network of networks that comprise FEN to have access to a great and compelling resource. When I was thinking about this and reflecting on it with the group, I was reminded of a concept from my tradition, a Jewish concept, which particularly takes place in our worship. And there may be analogous ways of discussing this in other traditions, both religious and non-religious, to contemplate the structure of your work, which is called in Judaism the kavah, and an analogy is the liturgy, with the kavanah, the spontaneity of heart, the ruach, the spirit that you bring to worship. So the words, but also the feeling in the room when you have those two elements combining. And something that we were thinking about was how can we add that spontaneity, that kavanah, to the keva, the structure and details that were there in the 10 Ways to Care. At that point, I had also recently come across a wonderful artist and permaculturist, Brenna Quinlan. She does amazing work that is in many different media and has a particular talent for conveying complex ideas in simple but very relatable and enriching illustrations. I'll flick to a talk that Brenna gave on Gardening Australia discussing her process and her work. And Brenna commented particularly when we commissioned this work from her that she was excited to work with us and how she sees the value in mobilising faith networks such as FEN. So this was the outcome, a series of images that encapsulate the 10 ways, that provide a mnemonic to remember them, that provide a resource for us to use in new ways, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit further on, to inspire our groups and provide a focus for the important work that we're doing that would be so familiar to members of AELA. So at this point, and also you can see some of the ways in which we've put together that practice implicit in the 10 ways of the reflection and action to create a new resource and to continue to develop our work and our outreach. So I'll stop sharing at this point and hand back to the participants to think about if you've got questions, if there's anything about that process, about the developing the resource or the 10 ways themselves that you're interested to engage in, or you have questions for us or to share with our participants here today.
Thanks, David. I might just invite Sue, perhaps, while people are putting the questions in the chat or thinking about things you'd like to comment on, to just maybe go through some of the actions that are in the 10 ways. So hopefully by looking at that image, you could see around the wheel the 10 ways that were there. And Sue will now spend a little bit more time on that. So thanks, Sue.
Could I just suggest that David bring those images back up while Sue speaks to them? Again, because...
I was going to go to the website, Michelle, so
okay,
I do know
even better. No,
you have something in front of you.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was just... so thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, David, for really opening up the process for us to have our 10 ways to care. And thanks, Anne, for really bringing this all together. And I'm just going to share a little bit about the 10 ways and maybe where they've come from, and maybe some examples of how we see faith communities doing this in practice. But as I said, and bear with me, I will share screen as well so that you have them there in front of you. And of course, let me go here. So I as Anne mentioned, and David, we've built up a resource that I saw was needed. I'm an environmental educator, and I know that the way that we as community come together is by sharing stories. And for me, this was a way to bring that complex way of wanting to really make change within our faith communities and across our country. And so the 10 ways is here on the Faith and Ecology Network. And I'm hoping this goes in. And so the 10 ways are wisdom from the elders, grow in your sense of place, learn from the sciences, collaborate with and learn from local care groups, to become eco-citizens, and to bring nature into our faith gatherings, to really bring green calendars into our faith practices, and to encourage members of our faith communities to have an active voice. And also that sense of growing in the wonder of nature. And then finally, it's making sure we actually celebrate and share our stories and share our successes, and really make sure that others know about what we're doing. So that's the 10 ways, just quickly sharing them with you. And they're there to download from our website. So I'll encourage you to do that. But just, I wanted to, thinking about what I would share with you, I love us as all members of a community really connecting to place, and that sense of place, and understanding what First Nations telling us to do, to care for place, that wisdom from the elders. And then, so for me, that sense of place was when I was working in Mount Druitt, and we created an environment walk, and it was just a really simple way of getting to know place, and others would come and have a way of reflecting and contemplating all the different elements that were on our church property there at Holy Family at Mount Druitt. And hopefully it also then encourages others to act and know about what's happening at our church property, but also linking and what other things are happening that people visiting and people participating and our local community. So hopefully it is growing that sense of place and that sense of connecting to country within our faith tradition, and mine being Catholic Ignatian. So that's just one example of the 10 ways encouraging us to reach out to our communities and really get that sense of wonder and in trying to get our communities on this journey to listen to the science and care for creation. So I'll stop sharing there. And and I'm just reading Neil's question. So Neil, that's, and
there's a question there from Walter too.
Yes.
Do you want me to read them out, or are you happy to?
Yeah, no, thanks, Michelle. That'd be good.
Yeah, so Walter has asked, what acceptance is the 10 Ways program having among various faith groups?
I'll answer that, Michelle. It's taken a long time, I have to tell you. We've been going for a fair while, and normally over the years we've had events focused on a particular area of common interest, and we would have input from the scientists on that particular area, and then input from faith leaders or others in the know with how faith communities can interpret it. But then actually getting the actions happening in the faith communities is more difficult. So that's why this 10 Ways has actually evolved. So we're just cranking that up a bit now, and I think that with this resource we'll start to get more impact happening. I think also I have a saying that the earth is speaking to us now, and it's really, earth is really starting to make her voice present in the evidence that the scientists are showing us, but what we're noticing around us. So I think people are starting to notice this, and the younger generations are really aware of it. I actually think with the 10 Ways, it offers hope to young people. I find in my faith community, we've started a land care group, and getting young people involved in that sort of thing is what they really like to do. And we like to encourage them to get their hands dirty and get involved in something positive. So I'm happy for people to comment on that and ask any questions, or put your hand up if you want to comment on it.
And just following on from that, can I ask, how are you going to keep track of the impact of the 10 Ways materials? Are you collecting stories from different faith groups or different communities who might be using it? And is that something you're going to feature on your website?
Yes. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for asking that question. Sue or David, do you want to come in with responses there?
Well, I really believe that storytelling is a way of enabling change to happen. It is through sharing and sharing across our faiths that we learn from each other and are encouraged and inspired. So for me, the 10 ways is always evolving. So it needs to have those stories added to it. And I know over various COP15s, when, you know, there are various events, we've had a blitz on social media. And for us, the potential is to share those stories across social media when they can come in. But yes, tracking them is maybe a little bit beyond us with the means we have at the moment. But it is knowing that it's evolving and growing, and hopefully more stories will make it a more useful document and or tool. A tool to go out and work. And for me, I see the 10 ways as also a little bit of a checklist. And if there's a space where people need advice or need help, it's that community that comes together to share and say, yes, like we are here to help how that environment walk happened, and it can happen at your place, you know. So it's about that sharing, that checklist, hoping that it builds practice within the ecology work that we're doing to care for Earth. So for me, yes, Michelle. But other ideas and other tips on how to track how we're going is also really, we're open.
So we've got the website where people can share blogs. Just email those to our faithecology@gmail.com, but also on Facebook and Instagram. As Sue said, our resources are pretty limited because we're all volunteers, so we appreciate any feedback that people give us. It's most important and helpful.
And we are launching the illustration resource later in October, so we're hopeful that through that engagement and at that event there'll be a bit more, some more opportunities to learn from our communities about how they can imagine using the 10 ways process and the resource. So that's also the next step, and I think that leads into the ongoing engagement.
And so I've got 2 more questions here, but perhaps just while we're on that issue of how you're going to be sharing this resource with others, like groups like AILA would love to feature the image and then link back to your website. So how can folks get connected with you and cross-promote what you're doing? Is it a case of just sending you an email?
Yes.
Saying, can we please have a copy and we'll pop it on our website? Because that's what we'd love to do.
Yeah. And we're hoping actually, because we really need funding, that people will share the resource, but also encourage people to contribute something towards that to help us to grow and to increase our impact. That would be really helpful.
And what's the best email address for folks to contact you all on? I'll pop it in the chat right now.
faithecology@gmail.com. Not hard.
faithecology@gmail.com. All right, just putting that in there. All right. Now I've got some questions here. Jen has asked, would you like to say more about how to generate wonder as a helpful higher emotional state?
Yeah, I think the 10 ways process is one way about, I think, the deep listening in the natural world, spending time in the natural world and reflecting, just spending time contemplating. A lot of people use the word meditation now, but that's a spiritual connection. And it's always action. There's always something in that reflection and contemplation that leads us to change our behaviour. Basically, what we're trying to do is bring about that change of focus from a me to a we, or an I to a we, so that we're connecting with all of life and moving from an anthropocentric position to a more ecocentric position.
I think there's a really good example in the illustration, and it also goes to another one of the questions about the power of illustration and the capacity there to prompt thought and to think of new ways. I'll just share screen again so people can see it for a moment. So that first question went to growing in wonder, and on the top left, so we've got the sharing successes of the people on their podcast, and then grow in the wonder of nature, and the image for that has a stylized natural environment. One would be very familiar to people, particularly in the coasts of Australia, with the high hills and the river running through it, and then two small people standing there in the middle of it and spending time in their sense of place. We've then can tie that back to the growing your sense of place one, where people are more focused. There's the little mnemonic there of grow in your sense of place as the trees are growing next to them and they're planting and directly caring for the earth. So I think that you can see in the image how these different principles tie together. I think that there's some potential there for people to look at the image and to think about two or three and think how they relate to one another. Another one there that I am particularly pleased with the way that we conveyed the spirit of it and the way that it's been drawn by Brenna is observe a seasonal calendar. So, Sue mentioned before the importance of introducing green calendars or eco calendars into our work or our worship. And here we've got the flowering of the wattle that's happening in so many places in Australia at the moment, as well as the eel run and the eel season, and being familiar with those. And again, then how that ties back to, at the top, learning from the wisdom of the elders. And this ties into one of the other questions about when will the Elon Musks of the world listen to the earth and listen to wisdom. One of the processes that became very clear to us through deep listening is how important it is to centre Indigenous, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and other First Nations experiences of the national world and that wisdom and that learning, and to make that not just something that's remembered or that's footnoted, but at the heart of what we do, and then to integrate it into our processes of workshop and other processes. I'll stop sharing at that point and go back to the general chat, but I think that shows how having the images tied together gives a different way of considering how to develop the conversation and develop the sense of wonder, because it allows for a more interconnectivity between the different 10 ones. And I hope that also answers a few of the different questions in one go as well.
Can I just add something that I experienced Monday? I visited a Sikh Gurdwara, and I was speaking with a Sikh lady and talking about the 10 ways and talking about biodiversity and mentioned the idea of invasive species, and she raised her eyebrows and said, wondered what that was about. And so I was trying to explain, and I mentioned to her about growing in a sense of place. And I spoke about the building, the big Gurdwara we were in. And I said, now we're in this building, but if we look at it and think about what's below it, what's underneath the soil, what's in the soil, what's above this Gurdwara. Get a connectedness, that everything's connected. So it's kind of trying to help us open our eyes and our ears and all our senses and move into a different place, and continually doing that, I think. The question from Sarah is for people who are already religious. No, I think a lot of people are very spiritual in a non-religious way. So I hope that answers your question. And the other comment that was about, I just realised that wonder is connected to faith. I think definitely that. In one of the images in the Fen video there, we were out in the Gardens of Stone in the Blue Mountains with Hayden Washington, who's a very dear friend in Fen, and he's very ill at the moment. But Hayden just constantly talks about the wonder of nature, and he expresses it in poetry. And I think all of that is all interrelated and interconnected.
Many of our participants and presenters are scientists or have been involved in different types of scientific work, including visualizing. We had a wonderful presentation on deep listening that included visualizations of birdsong. And those capacities for wonder, I think, are at the heart of a lot of scientific love of discovery and love of sharing nature that goes across different traditions. And then part of our work is incorporating the teachings of faith traditions into that, and also sitting with the difference between our faith traditions. That part of the way forward involves being able to sit and listen, and to sometimes sit in discomfort and think about what is needed to live and work together and to share in the care of the earth together.
And I might just quickly comment on that urban sort of nature deficit disorder that was mentioned in a question. And yes, we have nature deficit disorder happening all around us, and that sense of connection to place, wherever it is, urban, peri-urban, rural, I think we feel that we can have that interconnectedness wherever we are. It may not be the wilderness, but nature is wherever we are is part of the web of life. So for me, that wonder and awe is no matter where that is. And that I know some work is happening around the theology of the urban, So for me, it doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to go to another place to have that connection and that sense of the spirit, or that sense of interconnectedness that we all share as faith traditions. So, but maybe we should move on, Anne.
Yes, I think so. So hopefully keep asking the questions, keep putting them in the chat, and we'll collate them, and we can always feed back to you. So please remember to just contact us if you have anything you'd like to ask or share. So I'm just going to wave around a copy of the 10 ways that we've got posters like this that are available for people if you want to contact us. But we're going to workshop the 10 ways on October the 28th. David, if you'd like to put up that. Oh, and Sue, you were going to talk with Michelle about the green prints before I do that. David, if you put up the slide, please.
I'm just getting that up now.
So just while David's getting that up, we just wanted to ask Michelle to share how the green prints can connect
Yes, for sure. So for those who don't know about Green Prints, excuse me, we refer to it as the Green Prints program or the Green Prints approach. And in a nutshell, basically, I started by thinking to myself, after years of different community groups connecting with ALA around rights of nature and a whole range of earth-centered governance issues from law and economics and beyond. And I realized that my 30 years of work, I had seen remarkable work already being done across all of human society in every sector, in every discipline. But sometimes it was just really hard to bring it all together. So what we've designed and what we've refined, and I often tell folks that I dreamt a lot of this up when I was stuck in bed with cancer treatment, because when you're stuck in bed literally for 6 months on and off and you can't do much physically and your brain's still okay, you really start to draw on everything you've ever thought about and everything you've ever learned. And at that point, I was very lucky because I'd had a very multidisciplinary work experiences, different parts of the world with Indigenous friends and beyond. So in a sort of a summary, and the Green Prints website tells you a lot more about this, and there's a 1-hour public lecture by me telling you all about it. The steps that we mapped out are really a very almost deceptively simple way to help, particularly collective action. So it's individuals can certainly engage with these ideas, but it's all about how could we theoretically rearrange human governance systems in Australia so that we put the health of the living world and the flourishing of human societies inside the health of the living world first. Not just as a one-off concept, but literally a systemic change across law and economics, culture and education, and so on. So the steps that I'll just quickly read, and we don't have time to go in much detail, but the very first step is to think differently. And that means think differently about time, what's important, humanity's place in the world. There's that great quote by Einstein, you know, we can't solve our problems with the same thinking that got us into them in the first place. And the think differently phase invites people to really engage with ecocentric thinking and to imagine what human societies would look like if we actually gave space for the rest of the living world. And there's a whole bunch of other things in there around deep time. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's just shared the website for Green Prints in the link. And then we talk about defining ecological boundaries that are relevant to that collection of humans and what they'd like to achieve. It could be your local catchment. It could be your major bioregion, but placing your ecosystem within it. We're not ideological in any way. The key is to start by looking at the living world, not by human aspirations and what we want, because as we often critique in the Earth Laws work that we do, Western thinking has been so separate from nature, or seeing ourselves as separate from nature for so long. A lot of our planning, visioning, strategic planning starts with what humans want. And that's part of the problem. We're more interested in saying, hey, I live across this amazing rainforest catchment. How do I understand this place deeply? And that's step 3. Once you've worked out where you are, understand very deeply what those foundations are. Then look at the humanity across that place. And in Australia, that's Indigenous communities, what we've been doing, human activities. But you'll note that human activities starts at number 4. And often it's the thing people start with. We're encouraging people through the Green Prints approach to start by looking at place. And while that sounds very cliched and very, very much done to death, it's not the case. Australia's planning laws, our economic system, everything from the professions we learn to the schools we run, none of these things start by looking at caring for country. So the Green Prints approach helps by weaving together some of the coolest tools that we've been designing as a species to try to respond to the ecological crisis, and making it easier for communities, councils, anyone to do deeper analysis on how we can live here forever, and what exactly in a place do we need to change or transform to through a just transition to make life better for all living species and humans as well. So after we get to know place and really dig down and understand it and connect with all of the amazing groups and organizations that already do this work, and then looking across the economics, that's what step 4 is about: social justice, economic systems, etc. Then we have a look at the ecological footprint method and other ways of saying, how are we going in this place that we have defined and gotten to know and pull together our knowledge system? And then we say, well, rather than talk about sustainability as a generic magical thing that happens out there, we say, if you're in a desert, what's it look like here to be sustainable and to live here forever? If you're in a rainforest or a temperate zone or in a snowy place. So the developing scenarios are about, and I often give this example, if you're at the Sunshine Coast, if you roll out a scenario that shows if that area continues with the residential development at the scale that it's been doing for the last 20 years, there will be nothing left. So in that particular unique place with its particular unique geography, geology, microclimate, waterways, catchments, soils, plants and animals, what does business as usual really look like? And governments and corporations don't want to engage with this. They don't do scenario planning because it threatens the status quo. And it's going to be up to civil society groups bringing all of the very best tools together to start really mapping out across large landscape scale places what it's going to look like if we don't do so well, and what we could shift and change and move and improve in a particular place, so that we've all got something to head towards. Because while we must cut back and reduce fossil fuels, that's a generic goal. You know, what does that look like specifically in a place? How do we reduce plastics? How do we make sure that local food is sustainable and seasonal and appropriate? And there's so much more. And so by doing that, these steps, the other thing that we did do, because many of the folks, particularly in the Catholic faith system, because of Laudato Si, invited us to give a talk about green prints, connecting it to integral ecology, which, and I'm not an expert on anything that folks are up to inside the systems of Catholic sustainability. But what we did do was look at—
Michelle, Laudato Si was for the whole world. So
yeah, but we've always been invited in by Catholic groups because they're very specific about integral ecology being this framing. And I just wanted to show people, but yes, thank you, Sue, you're absolutely right. But it's had a particularly profound impact on faith communities. Secular folks, there's still a lot of secular folks who don't even know about it. So Laudato Si was an encyclical or a sort of a guidance from the Pope, which has had a really big impact on you know, millions of people. And all we did was we took core elements of the Laudato Si summary and showed how green prints can help to respond to the cry of the earth and interlink the cry of the poor and social justice. So I apologize, folks, it was a slightly long-winded explanation, but green prints—
no, that's great.
It simplifies profound and deep, you know, stuff that we all need to do together.
And I might just share, Michelle, that like green prints to me is an inspiration. It's a tool for the future. And so
thank you.
I feel that for us at FEN, it's our point of connection. It's one point of connection where I feel the 10 ways is also a place to look at integration and to look at how faith sectors can participate in green prints. So for me, it's a future thinking, it's a dream. It is exploring how FEN and AILA can continue to dialogue, and you know, so it's just the beginning. And yes, integral ecology is a space that many of us are in, but for me, it's even broader than that.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's great because I actually want to share your 10 ways on the Green Prints website and on the AILA website. So it's really lovely that we're all connecting these things. So thank you, Sue, for the chance to talk about green prints.
Michelle, I think they're very complementary. You have ideas in green prints around define, you know, the keywords there: define, understand, develop, collective decision making. And some of those 10 ways principles provide a simple but familiar way for people to start to engage with those, that could be or in new ways, or in ways that are a little bit
absolutely and
more grassroots.
I should stress, in a lot of ways, Greenprints is really looking big picture governance, and it really is looking across a landscape. And I think the complementary connection with the 10 ways is it really speaks not just to a community, but to an individual. You know, it really shows you what you can be doing at an individual level beyond just changing a light bulb. You know, it's that interconnection, that ecocentric way. I think it's beautiful. And I certainly think it could sit in the top left corner of a Greenprints image. You know, because as an individual,
as an example, as we're talking, so for the benefit of the others here, this is not scripted, but if we look at, for instance, understand ecological foundations, how that ties into growing in the sense of place and understanding the calendar and the time and place in the place where you are. So those are very easy ways for someone, you don't need to look at an environmental impact statement to understand your ecological foundations. There are other ways to do it that can then be informed by other forms of expertise.
I also think that the very first point in the Greenprints, think differently, is a crucial one. That's where the change kind of evolves. And I think in the both of these, it's a cyclical thing. So with the 10 ways, the listen to the wisdom of the elders, listen to the input from the scientists, the reflection, the contemplation, and the action, and it keeps going in a cycle so that you grow. You know, listening to the wisdom of the elders shows us how we grow in that, because the elders grow through that cyclical learning and listening. So thank you, Michelle. That's wonderful. We might move on from there. And so a couple of people are talking about, I see in the chat, the idea of what's the word you used? Eco-Spiritualism or eco-spiritual? Yeah, eco-spirituality, I think, is growing in all the faith traditions, particularly. There's a lot more awareness of that now. And I think we can learn a lot from the past and build on being aware of where we are now. And our spirituality and our faith traditions are constantly changing and growing as well. So I think that's what eco-spirituality is about. So on the 28th of October in Sydney at the Coal Loader Sustainability Centre in Waverton, which is on Sydney Harbour, and the Coal Loader was, as the name says, a place where coal was loaded onto ships, is now a sustainability centre, and it's a wonderful place. So we're gathering together in one room, 50 people from faith traditions, ecological educators, from environmental groups, from First Nations people, to introduce this resource to them. And then we will be workshopping the tool with them using the World Cafe process. And we'd like to invite you people along. If you're outside of Sydney, if you register on that Try booking link, we'll be able to have a hybrid version so that you'll be able to join in. And you can maybe, if you want to come along, think about today, think about the resource, and maybe you'll have some suggestions for how we can make this a much more user-friendly resource. We're thinking along the lines of taking each of the 10 ways and making it a discrete part on the website where people can actually go to that particular one and link it to the PDF version. So I'll just invite you to do that. And I would like to highlight that all of this that we're talking about now is really important in the context of a large global event that's happening, COP15, on the 7th to the 19th of December in Montreal in Canada. It was supposed to have been happening in 2020 in Kunming in China, And because of COVID, it's been delayed and delayed to 21, earlier 22. Now they had to move it from Kunming in China to Montreal to finalise the Kunming Declaration and the COP15, sorry, where they will have the biodiversity framework for the rest of this decade. So it's really important, also in the context of the biodiversity report that was, the State of the Environment report that was released by Tanya Plibersek in July, just stating how dire the situation is in Australia. So I think we'll maybe just finish up with that, David, if you want to stop sharing. And I'll just say a very large thank you to Michelle for hosting us. Thank you to David and to Sue for sharing the resource. Thank you to all of you for your interesting questions. And we will hopefully keep in touch with you. Please share your stories with us. And thank you very much.
Thank you again, David and Sue. Thanks for sharing all your hard work with us. And we certainly, Ayla hopes that we can help you promote that excellence and get more and more people connected to you. So
much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.